if you're just getting started or you don't feel like you've done this well, because we can play in these tools all day long, get subscriptions all day long, and it may not help you move the needle. The best way to start is with a brand identity document.
Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Diana Gladney. If you don't know who she is, she's an author of the book, The One Right Video. She's a video creator and AI strategist who helps creators and entrepreneurs apply AI to their content strategy. Her podcast is the Video Simplified Podcast, and her course is AI Video Mastery. Diana, welcome to this new show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Really excited with the new vertical we're taking with the podcast. So I'm really pumped for today.
Yeah, I am as well. There's probably going to be people listening to this podcast that don't recognize your name because it's a new audience. So why don't you share a little bit about your story, about how you got into AI? Start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, definitely. So usually in the content creation space and business, helping entrepreneurs simplify video, we're used to the regular social media types as they continue to populate and those we need to focus on. But some of those constants like Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, when it comes to business. And so my focus has been video for the longest. So I'm always on YouTube. Have an email list just specifically for keeping up with what's happening in the industry. And then in November, I feel like now it's like a big global event at this point. November, a couple years ago, OpenAI created ChatGPT. And so now you're seeing all these notifications and about what this makes possible. And so for me, I'm thinking, how does it work with video and content creation? How would that work for coaches, different business owners, and just general? And I was absolutely blown away. So of course, I created an account immediately that November, and within like less than 45 days, you start to see all of these different types of AI tools populate. And it was like an overnight kind of a thing. But I became, I don't want to say obsessed, but I had all of these instant questions that just popped in my head. So every day, at least for a good solid 60 to 70 minutes every day, I'm taking time to figure out how this works, and I'm looking to see how I can start to implement this. And so my start with AI is probably very similar to a lot of people's. You heard about it first, or you saw it someplace, and at some point you took some interest in it just to see how this could apply to you. And I start instantly finding ways to work with this with my audience. At the time, I was just getting ready to officially publish my book. And it was funny. I used some things in there. There's an image that I was able to generate with AI that's in the book. And it's just been able to help clarify a lot of ideas. So it's a lot of things like right at that time, I was like, well, what if I change and I could do this? So a lot of what ifs just instantly became possible overnight. And I think the rest is history at this point, or it's history in being written right now in the now as we're still discovering what we can do with AI. And as it continues to grow, so do we as well. So I've just continue to run with it.
Well, and to share a little bit more context for those that don't follow some of our other shows, Diana is a regular on the Social Media Marketing Talk Show. Typically, like every month and a half, she comes on to talk about what's happening in the world of YouTube. In addition, you're one of the only people that spoke at Social Media Marketing World 2023 on AI. It was you and Paul Raitzer, and you had a packed room. And then in 2024, you were one of many people teaching AI. And I believe you've also helped out with some stuff inside of our Social Media Marketing Society. So Diana has gone deep down the rabbit hole. And because she is a video creator, she's kind of really experimenting and keeping up with what's going on. And I do want to ask from your perspective to all the people that are creators or creatively leaning, whether they be video creators or writers or podcasters, why should they focus on AI? Because a lot of them see it as a threat, and why should they see it as an opportunity?
Oh, man. So I love this question because this is one of those very instrumental times in history where we get to be a part of history as it's being written. And it may not feel like that sometimes when these things populate that come up. People feel like it's a fad and people feel like it's a quick overnight thing. Thankfully, I'm of that age demographic to be involved in social media, have one of those first Facebook accounts when you still had to be invited to the platform when you were in school. And so we see this kind of stuff and we think like, oh, it's no big deal. It'll pass. Or that's not important for business. It'll pass. And the thing with this is not something that is going to pass to where, honestly, it is one of those industry shifters where either you are going to choose to be involved in the process, to be forward thinking and to have some foresight and be ahead of the game and the marketplace with other people that are doing whatever kind of business that you're doing, or AI will impact your industry and you will be caught on that negative half of it. There are people that still have been caught, unfortunately, on the tail end of that, maybe lost their job, lost a position, or it's just harder to acquire clients because what you used to do and could pay a pretty penny for, AI can do so much faster and cost little of nothing. So it's one of those things where your industry will be impacted. It's just a matter of what role you want to play of either kind of getting rolled over or being someone in the driver's seat trying to help doing the rolling.
Well, and that is one angle. Another angle also to consider is the upside to it for creators, right? Because um, sometimes there's only so many ideas we can have, and we've only got creative hours that maybe come and go at certain times of the day. And right? Like maybe a couple hours of the day is your most creative time, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
you've lost it because you got distracted doing something you didn't want to do.
Right.
Isn't it true that AI can kind of help spark a little bit of that creativity and bring it back faster so that maybe you can either A, come up with better ideas, or maybe B, move more quickly? Thoughts on that?
100%. And so that's probably one of the number one ways that I use AI the most. It's like a thinking business partner. And it's somebody that's educated in your space and is up to par with some of the most recent information, data, and other questions that even people ask with AI. And so it used to be something we would just journal on a notepad or put on a legal pad or something and come back to later, or you're waiting to get your team together when a time is conducive for everyone and ask questions and hope everybody got a good night's sleep and they're, firing off on their thinking brains or whatever. Or maybe you're paying for a high dollar mastermind. And so these powwows used to be like something like you have to strategize for to kind of start getting your mind ruminating around an idea. Whereas now we can start to take an idea and go several layers deeper in seconds, what would take hours, months, weeks, literally takes seconds and minutes now because we can use AI and pull way more data than we ever could, even with Google and the internet being as powerful as it is. AI just kind of amplifies all of that.
Do you feel like your particular content creation ability has improved as a result of AI, or do you feel like it's been a distraction? Because I'm sure a lot of creators are thinking, I don't want to learn a new tool.
Um, Interesting. So I would say for me, it's not been something that's distracting. It can be if you're just stuck searching or constantly just trying to drill down in it. As long as you can type, it will produce information for you. But what I found is it has helped me completely just kind of take leaps and bounds over what you would have taken maybe a few months before you got to that point. You can now do instantly, especially when you think of something as common as we all may need to, as marketers, entrepreneurs, content creators, is come up with video ideas, come up with new podcast ideas. Well, now it doesn't take as long to execute that stuff. And what you thought you maybe should make an episode on, since AI is now producing that globally for everybody, that's readily available information. Maybe we need to go layers deeper into that next step, and our audience matures with this. So we have to as well with creators. So that's how it's helped me a lot with just basic content creation kind of stuff.
Okay, so first of all, I hope everybody here understands that AI can be an exceptionally powerful, like spark, if you will, or start, if you will, to your content creation process. And we're going to dig into this right now. For anybody who wants to use AI to help them create any kind of content, where do we start? Where do we begin? Let's
Uh,
assume that these people that are listening are rookies when it comes to AI.
okay. If you're just getting started or you don't feel like you've done this well, because we can play in these tools all day long, get subscriptions all day long, and it may not help you move the needle. The best way to start is with a brand identity document. And what this is going to do is it's basically taking all the information that maybe you shared for some of your talks on stages, or is maybe in your brand packet or a proposal someplace or whatever. And we're putting all of the most important pieces on this brand identity document. You start with something very basic like your name, the name of your business, who you are if you have a personality driven business. So for me, that would just be my name. Again, And so I'm clarifying some of the basic details of who we serve, who we are, and what are some of our even products. And if you have a value ladder from your premium free offered things to maybe your high ticket offers, we're now listing the very basics and bones for the business. So before we start asking any question, it understands our position, who we are and what we do and who we serve.
Okay, so let's talk about, just because some people might not understand even why in the world a brand identity document even matters. So how does the creation of this identity document, which, if I can interpret what I'm hearing you say, the identity document is, this is who I am, or this is who my business is, right? And in this document, we're going to include some stuff that's going to be used in some sort of capacity. But like, why do we need this brand identity document? Because this is a new concept to a lot of people.
Yeah. So you want both. It's not an or, it's a both. Even if you'll primarily, well, we can discuss this later, but how, depending on how you want to use this or what you want to ask it, before I start asking it what kind of video ideas or, what should I do for podcasts or whatever, I'm not going to do that, because you'll get back general information and it may be off. And now you're fighting with AI instead of having a good relationship where you can get what you need quickly. And so we're doing this, we're saying who we are. So it knows if you say, write an email in the first person or the third person, or from the perspective of this position on the team, it knows who we're referring to speak to you or that person or position properly. If you have somebody on your team, like an assistant, who may send email out in their name, it needs to know who they are even. So brand identity document is saying the who you are. And you do want to describe your business, like I said, who you serve, who your ideal target audience is, some of their pain points, concerns, and problems that you help them to deal with, and even some of their frustrations that may be aware. So we don't just want to think basic demographics and listicles. We also want to list things like psychographics. So like quick pro tip that I would throw out for like my clients when I'm suggesting this to them is we have a section in this document where, we make a second one actually that includes, like in this packet, if you will, where one page is just solely describing our ideal target audience as if they were a person. And the basis for why we want to do all this, and when you get into psychographics, how they think or what have you, is because you can work a job and you can list anybody's demographics all day long, but you and your coworkers, same age, same kind of car price range, same neighborhood livings or what have you, you're very different people. You have very different wants, desires, struggles, or what have you. So in the context of your business and why this document matters to what you're going to do is so that you establish a very firm, concrete foundation so that you can create parameters for AI to go in. So if I say, for real estate owners that are specifically working in a county area that may be in a metropolitan for a major city, someplace like where I live in St. Louis, then it knows the parameters of the who we're referring to versus just saying, well, they're in North America, or they're in the United States. Well, that's very big and too wide and diverse. And you're like, give me some real estate ideas. Well, here's how you can buy a house in California. It's like, I'm not in California. Well, I didn't know that because you didn't create the parameters. So that's what the brand identity document does. So that when you start to move further on into these steps of getting those ideas, helping with brand strategy and whatnot, it stays within those parameters versus just kind of like going wild with it.
Okay, so let's take that example. You said a real estate agent in the St. Louis area, right? So you would say, if that example, you would say, like, help me understand, like, let's just create on the fly. What would something like that sound like if you were a real estate agent? Would you just say, I'm a real estate agent in St. Louis area, or what else would you say?
Yeah, I will go as if you were meeting someone for the first time. And I think that is the best way to go from feeling like you're needing to journal versus talk to a person. And it makes a huge difference. One, so it's easier for you because it's easier for us to just talk to a person, kind of like how we're doing now, versus feeling like, okay, Mike Stelzner, tell me this, that, whatever. No, it would feel very robotic.
Right.
Be very relational and conversational. So it's like I usually work with first-time homeowners that are just getting started working in the state, and maybe they move from Chicago, and they tend to buy homes in the St. Louis metropolitan area around these zip codes where homes range from $80,000 to $250,000. I usually sell to one car home owners, but sometimes they have two, and they usually have a early family or whatever. I'm describing those different
I
things.
love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm getting real granular with it.
Perfect. Okay, so just so we're clear, you're going to probably craft this in like a Microsoft Word or Google document, right? And this is going to be something that ultimately you're going to essentially feed to the AI so it knows how to best serve you. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
100%, and absolutely do this in something that is more like a Google Docs and something that anybody on your team can reference, because this needs to become a part of the system. Any new thing that we start, or even if you're starting with some of these new tools, we don't want to have to go back through and search all of like the it was Google Gemini, now used to be Bard, but it's Google Gemini or ChatGPT threads of all the questions and prompts that we put in. We want to have this document so it's copy and paste, and it's a referenceable doc. And as your ideal target audience or your market or your products shift, and how you need to serve them and they mature, you can just update the document, update AI, and say, we don't do that service anymore. That market died off, or houses are having issues. We've now switched to 500,000 to $1 million homes, and we've spanned it across these 3 states. And so you want that document so you only have to update micro things instead of starting completely over from scratch.
Perfect. So we're still inside this brand identity document, and we've just outlined a little bit about who you serve, but we want to dig deeper, right? Obviously, into this audience. So how do we take it further, specifically so that the AI understands the unique challenges, if you will, of the audience that we're trying to address here?
Yeah. So now this is where I will create a section or new header section, or whatever, and just make it a one continuous page, and just use like chapters, if you will, or sections in this document, especially something easy like Google Docs. And I start this off with ideal target audience. I give, and always recommend, give your ideal target audience a persona. The reason why is when you keep this very conversational and human to human like, instead of feeling like you're filling out a form, it also helps to communicate AI. Number two, how this person thinks. Number two, how you, as well as your speaking language, your brand voice guide, if you have one of those, you may want to paste some of that in there, and your voice style of how you speak. So you want to speak very conversational, as if you are literally describing a person. And we go as far to give that person a name, which is funny because at various times in social media marketing world talks that I've given, I'll refer to a person named Steve. And I'll just use this randomly as an example, but that's based on the persona of my ideal target audience. His name is Streamline Steve. And so in this document, I'll say Streamline Steve. He's between 34 and 45. He has a wife, and they already have a 5-year-old. And I'm describing all these different things about my ideal target audience, but not just, like I said, demographics and the basic listicles. I'm now getting into where he struggles in relation to how I help him. What is he afraid of? What is he so frustrated with? What does he hate about his current job or work he's doing now? And where does he find us in how we serve them? So if we're making YouTube videos, what's some of the first questions that he asks, that he types into search in the ideal target audience's language of how they would ask that question? Not you from with your doctorate degree and how you may talk or what have you. Not very technical. How the ideal target audience may say or ask that question, because this tool is smart enough to know, pick up context, and understand, like, oh, so they talk like this. They would refer to, instead of the depth of field in camera or whatever, they would say a blurry background. It's just like, oh, okay, so he doesn't know the language. It picks up on all of these subliminal things that you're typing in. And even if you don't specifically say it, it picks it up. So I'm starting to describe some of the struggles, frustrations, pain points, and even some of the solutions for when they're new. We have a free PDF guide. Like every year you guys give out a dynamite market guide in Social Media Examiner on like the state of social media, if you will. Okay, if that's something we do every year, then I'm going to mention that. And that's where he meets us first, because that may be what comes up first in Google. And so we go very exhaustively as much as you can, because you can always add on to this later, but just list all the stuff that you already have. So we get very granular with the audience that we're serving.
Well, and I can imagine if you don't know precisely what the struggle of your audience is as well as you would like, ChatGPT can help with that too, right?
Very much so. And the way that I would start to go into this is say, let's say that you are feeling kind of behind or you're not really sure, because again, all our audiences mature over time and they have new issues, AI being one of them right now. You say, well, we've traditionally helped them with this, this, and this. These have been our products and the kind of issues that help when we do a yearly conference. We have online workshops that we do. We make YouTube videos, blah, blah, blah. I even go as far as to list what some of those titles of the YouTube videos were, even to the point, and I promise you not too many people are probably doing this. I even go to the point to even just copy that YouTube generated script, that .srt file or what have you, the transcript, and I'll copy all those captions and I'm like, for reference or for context, so that it doesn't just say, what's the best camera for YouTube for entrepreneurs? And it's guessing what's in that video, or it's guessing what kind of cameras are recommended or what have you. I can say, this is the script for that video. These are the notes, or this is the transcript, so that you have reference of what I actually talked about in that video. And then you can say, well, based on this, and this is what has been most successful, what are some of the additional struggles that they might be having down the horizon? Or what are some of the things I'm not thinking about that I should be considering that they may have issues with? And it can draw up all kinds of stuff and not just give you answers, but it can back up why it's saying that. Well, I think it should be A because of this, and I think it should be B because of this reason.
If folks that have been listening to this podcast for a little while, and we're still very early in the journey, you're going to start to notice a trend. Many of my guests are talking about communicating with the AI as if it's a human. And if you think about it, Diana, if you were to hire an intern, you would be doing the exact same thing. You'd be putting a document together. You'd be asking them to watch these videos, right? And you'd probably be asking them, what do they see as the pain points in the videos? And what are some other pain points that they could hypothesize based on what they see in the video? And this is the fascinating thing about AI, is that it does process things kind of like the human brain. It's a little different, obviously, and much faster, but this isn't rocket science. So we've got this brand document. What are we calling it again?
Brand identity document.
Brand identity document. We've crafted it with a lot of details in it. Now we're ready to actually start thinking about content creation. So what do we do with this brand document, I guess, is the first thing. How do we use this with the AI? And then how does the AI help us create content?
Yeah. So the first thing is save it and give it a date. The reason why is so that you know, when was this last updated? And even if you have multiple people working, who is the last person to update it, whether that person works there or not. So at least you know, when's the last time that we touched this? So number one, you have that to always reference. And what I recommend and what I love to do is I do not have one continuous thread of a ton of different random stuff. What I would do is I would start creating different threads, because now you can start working on content. It becomes like the world is your oyster if you want. Do you need to now start working on podcast ideas? Because that is the most current thing that we now need to figure out or deal with, or that just would take a lot of pressure off the team. So if coming up with the next 4 to 5 episodes of a podcast is great, we paste all this stuff in for context and for reference, so that now when we start asking, my podcast is called this, our audience demographics of who we're attracting, or that it's a brand new show, is this, here's who I'm hoping and thinking that it might target. What are some episode ideas that I can come up with that makes sense to everything that I've shared? You don't have to go and list a whole bunch of stuff, because you're referencing, and I've done this since I've been playing in AI, is constantly checking the memory and remembrance status of like ChatGPT, and now with Gemini, and testing both of those. And what I found is when you create a thread or you're starting a new conversation, I like to think of it, I only want to start a conversation and keep that conversation going, so I don't have to think of have it work on changing its train of thought, so to speak. And again, this just could be extra, but this is how I found to get the best results. If in here I'm asking for data, if in here I'm asking it to double check the spelling grammar for an email, it's changing just like a person would have to. And I don't want it referencing an email that may have nothing to do with the area of the business that is dealing with content or what we're focusing on right now. So if we're dealing with content and podcast ideas, that now becomes the podcast ideas thread. and we stick to that being the podcast ideas thread. Another one that I use specifically with like content, even emails. I hate replying to emails. I hate having that conversation with my assistant on what emails need attention or what have you. And so sometimes, like again, if you have a brand voice guide or even just a voice style, this is how I usually reply to spam emails that need a reply, but that we're not proceeding with doing business with because it's completely out of line for our market. Well, if that doesn't make sense to your business or the stuff you want to do, you can have ChatGPT or Gemini or whomever start to generate a reply for you, and it sounds like you. Number one, it knows who you are, it knows your business, it knows your ideal target. It's like, yeah, we don't usually cover windshield washer fluid as an ad spot on this podcast. We're talking to marketers, business owners. While they may have a car, it's like we're not doing that. So it replies with context. If it's creating ideas, it creates ideas with context. And so now we can just start specifically working on content ideas, whatever vertical we want to dive into.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is whether we're creating videos, whether they be longer form videos like YouTube videos or shorts or TikToks or reels or written posts or even podcast episodes that are audio first, we go ahead, we open up our favorite generative AI tool, we create a new thread, we paste in this brand identity content, and then we specifically ask it for a question, right? Like, is the question like, come up with my next, or present to me 5 different ideas of what I could do my next podcast episode on? Is that generally what we're asking? Or do we need to be a little more substantive with the way we ask the question? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, 100%. So it depends on what kind of reply you're hoping for. And depending on what kind of reply you're hoping for will detail what kind of a prompt or typing question that we want to ask. If we simply want podcast topics and maybe we say we just want something, I would type in something to the effect of, based on the information I've shared, we need to come up with our next 4 episodes for our podcast titled X, Y, and Z, or the name of the podcast. What are some podcast topic ideas? However, if I am just looking for general ideas and I want to kind of pick from a broad list, what I'll do is add in a numerical value to say, give me 7 podcast topic ideas, give me 10 podcast topic ideas. However, if I want something that's more granular, let's say we're working for promotion. For example, I know that a lot of people usually do workshops or something like that, or they have some kind of a launch throughout the year. What I would do is now give it more context to get more specific, granular, detailed information, and just a little bit. We're not talking anything super complex. Just something to know, like our next launch is on an email workbook so that you increase your open rate for your emails. Or maybe it's a podcast, not podcast, but it's a YouTube video series that we're doing. And in these videos, we need to be constantly promoting our new service that we're offering in the business. Maybe let's say we're offering video editing. But I need these videos to somehow talk about something that is related to that. It feels natural and it doesn't feel like a forced issue. Now give me video ideas around that, or now give me podcast topics ideas around that. And whatever you last produced that either did well or is similar to stuff that you've talked about, I would add in and say, for reference or for context, here's some of the podcast topics I've already covered talking about X, Y, and Z. So we can skip past some of the frustration of it telling you to make a episode on what you've already made an episode on, but it doesn't know that if it doesn't know that information. So that's why, like I said, brand identity document covers a lot of ground, but the more granular our question is, the more detail we want it answered. We now maybe need to give a little bit more context based on that. We can even dive into like hooks, like I say specific video titles, or even like specific video strategy, but it just depends on what kind of an answer you're hoping for.
Yeah, I love this because there's a couple of key things I want to reiterate that you said. First of all, if you're selling a product and or a service and you want to figure out a way to convey that in the substance of the content that you're creating, this can help you with that. And I think that's really valuable, right? Because I think you mentioned earlier that, and maybe it was when we were offline, I don't remember exactly, but you can create content that can get a ridiculous amount of views and it might have been someone else that mentioned this to me, but it may not be the right kind of views. It might not be the right kind of audience, right? And none of those may convert, right? So when you train the AI that this is my perfect target audience, these are
Mhm.
their struggles, and I'm about to create videos, not just for the sake of creating videos, but with the objective of educating and persuading them to be able
Mhm.
to buy this thing that I hope to sell down the road. That's when that's when the magic can start coming out of the system, which I think is so wise, right? Because we just assume that the AI is just going to give us ideas, but it can go way beyond that. And I love how you hinted at you can use this for every aspect of your video. So why don't you drill down into, like, for example, you mentioned hooks and all that stuff. Like, let's drill into how we can use the AI to help us not just come up with an idea for a video, but
Mhm.
to help us come up with all the important elements inside the video while we still are the original creators making the content.
Oh, I love this. Okay, so this is the part that gives me the tingles. Okay, so what you can do is, let's say, like I said, we're doing a launch for a product or a new service in the business. We now want to work backwards. We know what that thing is going to sell, and we generally know maybe the price point and the kind of things that we want. If we know we've made content around or talking about it that's been received well, we would maybe want to go in with hooks, because if we don't really capture the audience's attention within those first 8 to 15 seconds. YouTube categorizes the intro as the first full 30 seconds. However, if those first 5 to 8 seconds aren't capturing their attention, the rest of those seconds don't matter, because they're not getting to them, or they're skipping past it to something else. We don't want that. So what I would do is go in, and now we're starting to do like a little bit of like case study type stuff. What video do I have that has done extremely well? And if you've not made videos or content in this area before, that's fine. You can go to another person's video, and what hook seemed to grab your attention best, or based on the comments underneath that video, or of your own. We'll just stick with your own for now. Have you gotten that people really responded to it? Because if we know we've gotten a lot of views, we've gotten a lot of content, the hooked work, the intro work, the formula of the video is working for us, and we did a great job here. So let's just recapture that. So I would put in the hook of the video, the name of the title of the video, the purpose of it, what we offered in that video, what our call to action was, and even what that product was. And now let's say that was a level 1 video. We now want to go level 2 with that next product line. So now it's like, I need a hook that's similar to this in the video, because we can just pull up the auto-generated captions, and we can say, in this video, this was the first 5 to 8 seconds for the hook that I shared for this video, and I'll copy and paste that in. Even if you don't want to go through the hassle of spell checking and all of that, it's smart enough to pick up the details in the in-between.
So just so we're clear, you're typing in the first few words that you said inside the video. Is that what you're saying? Is that
Yeah, or
correct?
really just copying and pasting it from the
Closed caption file?
captions. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So you don't have to type it, because that way it's super fast.
Right.
And so I paste that in, and I'll say, this was the hook, this was the title, this was the purpose and call to action for the video. I need 7 more hooks that are very similar to this, or uses this kind of a structure. You don't have to identify what that structure is unless you built a structure for how you create hooks or what have you. And so you can say, this was the hook. I need 7 more hooks that use the same kind of framework in reference to maybe some of the future video ideas that it gave you that you like. And you say, this is the video topic that we want to make the video on. Now give me 7 different hooks that are just like this, but for this new video idea. And it will give it to you. And if you ask, you can even say and justify why you think this is a good hook, or which one you think would be best. And it will tell you, well, I don't think, like, the first one is cool, the second one is okay, but the third example that I gave you, this one seems most on brand based on our conversation. And it will reply to you like that, because this is what it is, a conversation. And this is so fascinating, because you didn't have to spend the brain power or the time with your team or whatever. And you can now go and look through it, because you're the expert, you know. So you can look and say, yeah, that one really resonates with our audience. You're like, okay, great. What are the 3 main points? If we use this hook, what are the 3 main points we should cover in this video that maybe I'm not really considering or thinking about, that most people would overlook, that we should talk about based on what we want to sell for our call to action in this video? And then it will tell you, like, these are the 3 main bullet points that you should cover in this video. And so now you have a really good, comfortable way because you know the information that you should talk to for those bullet points. You know how to, usually frame a call to action. But if you don't, you can start to drill down to either of these sections. Like, what things should I really talk about for this point? Because sometimes it will give you an idea that you hadn't thought about or considered. And you're like, I've not covered that before. I'm familiar with it, but share with me more about why you think this is relevant. And if I was to do this, what would I even say? And it would give you an example based on your conversation and how you've been talking to it. It'll say, well, you may say something like this, and this is why I think so.
Interesting. Okay. So, so far we've talked about how to use this for the hook, which is the first like 5 to 8 seconds of the video, which is the most important, one of the most important parts of the video once they hit play. Let's talk about titles and thumbnails also, because obviously, we want to be thinking about that also before we're recording the videos, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so this is another very exciting one. AI now has the ability to generate images for us. And with another tool called DALL-E, they are now hooked in, and even Google Gemini, I'm not sure exactly what they're using, but it could generate images for you. And so I'm not great with coming up with thumbnail concepts or ideas or whatever. So let's say we plan out the video, or we at least know what the video title should be. I will go in this same thread, because it has all this information for context, and say, this is great, this is fantastic, because I'm confirming to it we're on the right track, and we're in the same thinking space. We're lying neck and neck. I need some thumbnail ideas. I usually go anywhere between 5, 7, or 10. 10 I found sometimes you can be less accurate. And so anywhere between 5 to 7 is usually a good numerical bench point, instead of like, give me 50 ideas, give me 100. And now it's just getting too watered down. So 5 to 7 is great. For thumbnail ideas, I'll say, give me 3 to 7 concepts or 5 to 7 concepts of what you think would be the most attractive thumbnail to stop the scroll, capture my ideal target audience's attention, so that they would be mouth-watering and wanting to watch this video. And I use that kind of a language because that's how I actually feel. And that's how I want them to actually feel about the thumbnail, versus give me 5 to 7 thumbnail ideas. No, I'm describing the emotion, because we're human beings. They do feel something when they're searching for the resolution or the answer to a problem, or they just have a curiosity, or this will be how they make money with something, or so it's more of a positive uptone, whatever. And so the thing is, I want to have all these different things. So the main thing is, with the thumbnails, I really want to describe what that emotion is that I want my ideal target audience to feel, because it knows the ideal target audience. We've talked about the pains and the pressures. We've gone through and talked about the issues that make this video relevant. And we know what we would want to sell for our call to action here. So it makes sense for us to now describe the emotion based on those pain points and frustrations and the desired end result goal that this person wants, that would make them want to click. And so I'm describing this in a conversational tone, because that's all we've been having with this AI tool right now. And so the beauty with all of this, where we are right now at this moment, it can give me those things and it'll describe it to me. And then I'll type in 2 amazing words, which is show me. Because most of the time, it'll describe something that looks amazing or would sound amazing, but it's like, I don't know how I would do that or describe that to somebody, because, we don't have the picture in our mind for it. So I'll just say, can you show me what, 5, 6, and 7 could look like? And it'll be like, yeah, definitely. And it starts to generate the images for you. I did this with the PDF guide that I gave away at Social Media Marketing World this year. Same thing. I wasn't sure what kind of a cover would be appealing. So it already knew who the ideal target audience was. It already knew the kind of things that we talked about that I want to cover in the talk. But now I'm like, this needs to make sense, be appealing to the audience, not feel like animated or cartoon-like to where it's a turnoff. It needs to feel very much so in alignment. When they see it, it's like an aha, like, absolutely, I must get this. And so it described something to me, and I said, show me. And it generated something very similar to what that image was. And because this is pulling from royalty-free stuff and things that you actually can use, my then question would be, can you give me like, or I like example number 3, like, can you give me the source files or where you got the images from that you used to combine this? And it'll say, sure, I pulled it from this website where we have royalty-free images and this one and this one. So now you can download those assets. You can use that actual image if you want to, and use a part of it. What I usually try to do is just recreate it as best as we can, or something that we're picking up from that idea. And you can give that to your thumbnail person, or you can now go into Canva or what have you and start crafting that graphic. And so that is exactly what I did for that image, and using
That's
all
really
these free
cool.
resources.
That's really cool. And for folks that have Adobe licenses, Adobe Firefly is obviously a really cool tool that comes with the Adobe suite that allows you to do cool image generation. And the example we're talking about here presumably is DALL-E 3 integrated with ChatGPT. As of this recording, Llama 3 is now available at meta.ai, which can do very rudimentary images, not nearly as good as the stuff ChatGPT can do. But I love the idea that you're asking it to come up with ideas, and then you're essentially saying, show me. I was thinking you were going to copy that into another prompt and ask it to create the image, but I love the fact that you can just say, show me. Now, beyond the coming up with the title, we didn't even talk about the title. I mean, do you do a similar thing with titles? Do you give it some constraints, like the titles need to be this many characters, and ask it to come up with like a bunch of titles as well?
So some of this now, because so many people are doing this, and using it in very different ways around like YouTube and video content creation ideas and such, it already knows for the platform. So unless the platform just recently changed the character number or what have you, like back in the day when it was still Twitter, it was like, I remember it was a big deal when we got more characters,
Right?
So you could have more. But now it pretty much knows what that parameter is. But at best, it's like I may clarify that best practices says that it should be between, like 60 and 75 characters or something like that before it gets, I believe it's like truncated or whatever. It's like ... or whatever. They can't see it. And so I'll usually just say something like that. Like I want them to be able to see it on mobile before it gets cut off. And I want them to be able to see it on desktop before it gets cut off. So I'm just giving smaller parameters, but it pretty much knows at this point. And so I will do that with titles specifically because still like 5 to 7 is usually the range. I usually just go with 7 to keep it simple. And I'll say, give me the titles, but depending on, again, what we know we want to do with this video or where it serves in our content strategy, then I'm going to say, I really want this to be more emotional, or I really want this to be more strategic. Pro tip on top of this is that I would even go as far as to say other similar videos that have done well have used this title or what have you, so that it knows other levels of success that's already happening in the industry online actively, because it is up to date, but it won't see the absolute latest information that you're seeing. So I will do this to save myself time. Take a screenshot, upload the screenshot, so it can just see it because it can read the text. It can also read the images and information like that. Don't necessarily have to type. You can say, this is what comes up as the first 4 to 5 videos on desktop when I'm searching for this, keyword phrase or something in this niche. And then I get my video titles. But another pro tip on top of the pro tip, once I've done that, I will then ask it to rate it. Rate the quality of these titles based on everything that we've talked about so far. And the reason why is because I don't want watered down tips, titles, tactics, none of that. I want it very specific to the parameters that we initially set, starting with that brand identity document, so that when it gives me the titles, it can know if these are good. And I'll say rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest and best. And why you think this is a 9 out of 10 video idea, or why you think this is a 5 out of 10 video idea. Because sometimes it could be the 3, 4s, 5s, or the 7s that we think are great. And the 8, 9, and 10 is like, I don't know about that idea. So it's like, justify your reason for why you say so. And one or two things will happen. It will either say, and back up, like stand behind it. Like, I think this is a 9 out of 10 because based on our conversation and the kind of stuff you're saying that they're having issues with now, in a few more, months or maybe potentially this year or so, they're going to run into this if they continue to grow on the trajectory that you said that you're having in your business or what have you. Or you'll find that it can reevaluate and say, you know what, now that you say that, based on our conversation and some of the stuff we just talked about, maybe this isn't that great of idea. So I've changed my rating on that. And instead of it being a 9 out of 10, I would say this is more of a 7. And here's why.
This is really awesome. I would imagine what I love about this is we're not using ChatGPT. And by the way, folks, we're talking about the paid version of ChatGPT to have most of the features that Diana is talking about. The free version is not gonna be able to read images. It's not gonna be able to generate images, and it's not nearly as advanced. And this is probably true whether you're using Claude Opus or Gemini or any
Yeah.
of the other tools. So what I love about this is we're using AI really to help us over the difficult humps, right? Which are the ones that
Hmm.
matter the most, right? Like, first of all, is the idea really good to begin with before you even started, right? Like,
Yep.
because there's a lot of energy and effort that's going to go into video creation once you actually feel convinced that you've got a good idea. You still have to create the video, you have to add your personality, you've got to edit it, all that kind of stuff. This is going to help you feel more confident, right, in the stuff that you're creating, so that and so that you increase the likelihood that you hit the target, but
Mhm.
also so down the road you can feed in the video that did work, right, to the AI
Yep.
system, and it can keep supporting you over and over again. Do you find that the people that have followed this model have saved a lot of time and are much more excited about their output?
100%, 100%. And like something as very basic as refining the topics that you cover in the video, refining the podcast ideas, or like I said, there's refining the product of whatever it is that you were going to offer. What I'm finding with those that I've worked with is that the ideas of where they started that they may have stopped at, they've been able to go so many layers deeper. And it's just like, this is incredible, or we could launch this tomorrow, or we could add it. And so it just starts to blossom with what you have. And so when you add in the human aspect of this and our involvement and our genius and all these different ideation aspect with what we've been able to generate just one to one, it makes this such an amazing process to really start to get results with this. And I can tell you, I did this even with my latest talk at Social Media Marketing World, because you don't want to be talking about something that they could have already found on their own. You don't want to be offering to pay for something that is now a base level, free level, something that they could literally type in with no context in ChatGPT or Google Gemini. And so now this gives us a way higher baseline to start with to meet our audience with actually where they are and as they continue to evolve and your product line and your ideal target audience matures as well.
Diana, if people want to connect with you on the socials, do you have a preferred place to send them? And then if they want to discover more about your business, where do you want to send them as well?
Yeah, definitely. So you can find me across any of the socials at Diana Gladney, or even on YouTube, you just type in at Diana Gladney. And then if they want to dive more in with me with the business, then they can go to aivideomastery.live, or just simply like dianagladney.com/AI. We'll get them there as well.
Thank you, Diana, so much for coming on and answering all my questions.
Oh, it's been a blast. Again, thank you for inviting me. It's been my honor.